Hello, my name is Mike, and this is a bike. No, this is an engine. It has nothing to do with bikes. Once again, I'm trying to be consistent about my intros. Anyway, I purchased this engine very, very cheap because I needed a replacement for the engine in my 67 Mercury Cougar. See, the engine that was in it, well, it was the wrong engine to begin with. It originally came with a 289, but the engine that was in it was a 351 out of a 68 Torino. So at some point in time, somebody did a swap, but I kind of wanted to keep it the 351. You know, it's a little more oomph to it than a 289. 289 is a good motor, don't get me wrong, but, you know, I don't know. Anyway, the old block is cracked, not easily repaired, couldn't find anybody to deal with it. So I got this one cheap. This is out of a much newer vehicle. It has a huge advantage over the original one, and that is that it has roller lifters. I don't have flat tappet lifters in this engine, so I don't have to worry about the zinc content in my motor oil, things like that. So modern engines do have certain wear characteristics that are better than the earlier engines, and this is one of them. It's a truck engine, so it's a truck engine, so it's designed to deliver a lot of torque. And being a modern engine, it's got the serpentine belt set up, which I like, so I'm going to try to keep that if I can. But one thing I cannot keep, because I don't have the wire harnesses and the computers and all that, I can't keep the fuel injection system, which is fine because, well, I've ordered an intake manifold that will allow me to use a Holley carburetor on this engine. The other thing I need to get, because I don't have the electronics, is I've also ordered a distributor. One of those distributors that uses basically a GM distributor cap, where you only need one wire, and you just plug that wire in and boom, you got a distributor. So it'll make it pretty easy to convert, I think. Famous last words. So in this episode, I'm going to strip this down a little bit, get some of the stuff off it I can't use, and hopefully within the next few days that intake manifold and that distributor will arrive and we can install them, and who knows, I might actually get an engine in this car that's been occupying my back porch for about 4 years now. We'll see how that pans out. Well, stick around.
Somewhere in a dusty, dirty back alley in western Arizona, not far from historic Route 66, is an old fart trying to cram a square peg into a round hole. He'll work on anything, just as long as it's got at least 2 cool wheels.
me show you where we're at on this project. I removed the stuff I didn't need. I took the upper intake off. I've ordered and received a very nice manifold that I'm going to use. It's for carburation. And I haven't removed it, the manifold yet, because I wanted to clean the engine up. I went through like 3 or 4 cans of that, you know, spray-on degunking stuff. And it's only marginally cleaner. I just got a lot of schmutz on it, but it's much better than what it was. A lot of you would say, well, go ahead and spray paint it. Well, I'm kind of hesitant to do that because, well, paint doesn't stick to grease real well, and it'll just flake off anyway. But what I'll probably do is put the original blue valve covers on it to, you know, give it a little bit more of an original look, because they didn't go to the gray color until sometime in the 80s. So we'll do that. But the other thing is, well, I did something I don't normally do. See, I'm the type of guy who doesn't measure and just cuts, right? And then I cut again because I got it wrong, and I cut again until eventually the part I'm cutting is no longer usable. That's typically how I roll. I would have done the same thing on this and just simply dropped that engine in and struggled with it and found the mounts didn't line up because the motor wouldn't go down low enough because, well, the oil pan would be hitting on my steering ram, on my steering linkage. So I actually did something that I don't normally do, and I measured the oil pan in relationship to the engine compartment and found that, well, the truck oil pan on this is about 1 inch deeper than the oil pan that was on the engine that came out of it. Yay me, I just saved myself a whole bunch of trouble. Not something I normally do. You know, I might want to do that more often in the future. Nonetheless, that means I've got to swap the oil pan for the one that came out of the car. I know this one will clear because it was in it. So we'll do that. I got to clean it up a little bit more. So we're going to change the intake manifold, the distributor when it arrives, the valve cover gaskets, and the oil pan. One more thing that we want to do on this is because I wanted to get headers for this, but because this particular car never came with a 351, there are no headers out there easily available that are specifically for this engine in this car. Now I know some of you are going to say, well, wait a minute. It's a 351 Windsor. Is that a small block Ford? Well, yeah, it's a small block Ford, and these did come with a 289, but you have to remember, the reason the 351 is bigger than a 289 is because it has more stroke. More stroke means the deck height is slightly taller, and if the deck height is slightly taller, that means the heads are going to sit up a little higher and further out, which means my exhaust manifolds are also going to be a little higher and a little further out, which means that headers that might fit the 289 just fine may not fit and gain the clearance I need underneath the firewall and stuff with the 351. So I've got to do a little more research, and really, in the interest of getting this car on the road, I can do a different exhaust later on. I can do a different cam. I can do all that other stuff later on. I just want to get the damn thing running. Been occupying space way too long. So what we're going to do is we're going to also install the exhaust manifolds that were on the old engine, because I know they'll bolt right up to the exhaust pipes that are already on the car. It'll just make reinstalling the engine that much easier. So again, so much of what I'm doing is I just want it to go. Anyway, so the next couple of steps, we'll do the valve covers, the intake manifold, the oil pan, and the exhaust manifolds. We're going to have to change the flex plate as well, because this came with an AOD and there's a C4 in this. So we're going to want to use the correct flex plate and engine spacer and all that. So those will be our next couple of steps. I'm not going to do them right now. You'll notice I'm not exactly dressed for working on a greasy engine, although my shirt's a little dirty. It's not that dirty. I'm getting ready to go on a motorcycle ride, and it's a little cold and cloudy. We'll probably get some rain today, but when I get back from my motorcycle ride, hopefully I won't be sopping wet, and I'll delve back into this. So we'll be back in a little bit. I'm going to jump on my motorcycle, go for a pipe. Talk to you in a little bit. So here's kind of our big holdup. I've got a bolt broken off in the cylinder head. So I'm going to have to get that sucker out before I can go any further. What fun. Now I'm screwed. The drill bit broke off inside the bolt. It's gonna be one of them days. So, after quite a bit of struggle, I got the broken off drill bit out. Still got a broken bolt to remove, but at least I don't have to worry about coming up against hardened metal of another drill bit. It's getting there. And then finally, the broken bolt itself. You'll notice that, well, it's pretty well hollowed out. Kind of cut into the threads a little bit, but I think I have enough threads left to hold another fastener. I'll just make sure the fastener is slightly longer. Turns out the hole actually goes all the way through the head. There's an opening at the bottom here. So in a worst case scenario, I guess I could put a nut on it, but I think there's going to be enough threads. I'll check it before I go. But now I can finally put the damn manifold on. Well, wouldn't you know it, just when I thought the nightmare was over, well, there's round two, another broken bolt. And, there's a pretty good chance I'll have a broken one on the other side. I haven't got there yet. So we're gonna just, do the manifolds. I tell you what, when these bolts go back in, they're gonna get some anti-seize on them, because in the future, if I go to put headers on this thing, I don't want them broken off while there's the bolts broken off while the engine's in the car. It's that much harder to do. So now's the time to be doing the drilling and the easy outs and all that stuff. Now I have a new problem. Because the pan is different, well, there's a little notch out here for the oil level dipstick. And this dipstick, well, it goes for a rear sump. This is a front sump. And I could like clearance the pan, kind of notch it out a little bit here, kind of like it was on the other one, which is right there. However, it's still not putting the dipstick in the sump. And in fact, I think once I get that pan up in place, it's just going to kind of deflect a little bit. I'm not sure how accurate that would be. So accuracy's not good. So I have a new solution. Even though this timing cover is different, the OE timing cover had a hole in it right here for the dipstick tube. Like so. It would go in there, into that hole. But it's not present on this timing cover. And not only that, even if it was, well, there are just too many accessories in the way. However, I observed that on this side, well, I could actually kind of sneak this on down in here. And right there below the oil pressure sending it, right there where the tip of the probe is hitting, I'm going to drill a hole. I'm going to stuff this dipstick in there instead. Now, granted, it's not going to be able to be as accurate because, well, it's going to be sitting a little further down. So what I'll have to do is put the appropriate amount of oil in the engine, see where it is on the dipstick, and then remark it. So, going to drill a hole, going to plug this hole, and see how that pans out. So here is what I ended up with. So now I have a place for my dipstick, and it should get a fairly close measurement. It's not going to be 100%. Jam the stick in the tube. That'll go right down into the sump. Yeah. And it's chrome. That means it'll run better. Alright, next I'm going to install the ignition system. I got a set of new plugs. The plug wires on it look pretty good, so I'm going to keep them, but here I have a pretty shiny new distributor. Pretty cool, huh? And, well, you know me, it was the cheapest one available on eBay that had the one-wire connection and the coil built into it. Basically, it's the same configuration as a GM HEI system with the coil built right into it. I have good plug wires, I have spark plugs. Now I could have used the Ford HEI distributor that was in that engine. However, the problem with that is, well, it's tied into the computer system, and so the timing and the module and all that's built into the ECM. So I really couldn't use that without doing a lot of extensive rewiring. I could have used the breaker point ignition that came out of the car to begin with, and it would have worked probably. But the problem is, well, the earlier engines used a different spark plug that is a different diameter and has a different probe length and all that, because the breaker point ignition systems, they ran around 30 to 40,000 volts. And with the HEI, well, they run around 65 to up to close to 100,000 volts. So the spark plugs are different, and I might have had difficulty getting these spark plugs to sparkle. They might not have sparkled. So this is a good combination. This should give me plenty of firepower. But before I drop the distributor in, well, I'm going to go ahead, dump some oil in it, and then I'm going to go in through the distributor drive opening, and I'm going to spin the oil pump and deliver some oil up through the oil galleys and so forth to give the oiling system a prime. So when I go to start the engine for the first time, it's not running dry. So I'll do all those things, and our ignition system and our oiling system should be ready to rock and roll. Now what I've done here is I've connected my test light to the oil pressure sending unit and grounded it to the engine. That way, when I achieve the proper amount of pressure, it'll close that circuit, and it should turn my test light on once I've achieved oil pressure. So we'll give it a spin, and looky there. Okay, I had it running a minute ago, or my drill running a little bit ago is why it primed up so quickly. But you can see now I have enough pressure that it's closed the switch, my light came on, and I know my oiling system is completely primed, including the oil filter and all that. Well, I think I'm all ready. You know, I thought I was just gonna, pop a new intake manifold on it, drop it in the car. Boy, was I wrong. But that's usually how these things go. There's always this long checklist of things, and the more you get into it, the more problems you find and have to resolve. So let's go over the checklist. Wrong engine, check. Wrong intake manifold, check. Wrong distributor, check. Is it put in properly? We'll find out when I go to try to start it, huh? Original blue valve covers, no check. Well, I was going to put the blue valve covers on it, but they're not in as good a shape as I seem to remember them to be. And just kind of like with the manifolds, the valve covers are pretty easy to get to. So, we'll kind of keep our eyeballs peeled for some of them fancy chrome ones. We can add some more horsepower to our engine that way. Or the ribbed aluminum ones or something. We'll keep our eyeballs open at the swap meets for some prettier ones to go on here. And really, I don't think pretty valve covers will do us much good because the rest of it looks kind of crappy. Well, we'll kind of have to play that by ear. We'll fix it up and add nicer stuff to it as we go. Let's see, the wrong belt configuration, check. Wrong dipstick, check. It's chrome though, that adds 5 horsepower. We have the original manifolds, check. Have the correct oil pan and oil pickup, check. So I'm thinking we're pretty ready to drop this into the old Mercury and see if it runs. We're not going to do it in this episode. You'll have to come back for the next episode because, well, I'm still missing a few things that I need. I've got the mounts on the way. I've got the an electric fuel pump. Since this doesn't have a mechanical pump, I got it on its way. We're going to need those things before we can drop this in the car. So the next episode, hopefully we'll just drop it in. You know how that goes. And we'll be able to connect some fuel lines to it, some power to the distributor, and hopefully fire it up. So come on back for the next episode and, well, let's find out if this is worth all the trouble I went through to get it ready. Thanks for watching.